share my screen. Hello, everyone. My name is Nikki Dickins, and I am the Assistant Director for Career Engagement and Professional Development at the Lockheed Martin Career Development Center here at UTA. It's a lot of words. And I am really excited to have the opportunity to talk today about managing your digital identity and virtual networking. Just kind of a really timely topic because of the way that job searching has changed a little bit this year, with everything leaning more toward being virtual. So hopefully we will be able to talk about some best practices and some things that you can be thinking about as you try to network online and making sure that you're putting your best foot forward in the way that you represent yourself in those platforms. And so I wanted to start with a quick overview of just in general what the job search process looks like. This is a question that we get a lot in our office. And so I thought this would be a really good place for us to start today, just to kind of make sure that we're all on the same page, and kind of what this might look like for you as you're starting your job search. I don't think there's anything that should kind of jump out as being super out of the ordinary, but if you do see something, take note, feel free to ask a question about it. First of all, you're usually going to start by finding jobs that you want to apply for and submitting your application online. And then there's usually at least 2 interviews. So a lot of times there will be a phone interview or sometimes it might be called a phone screen. And then the on-site interview, which is potentially going to be a virtual video interview instead. So that is just more of what we would consider an in-person interview or a video interview, just to kind of maybe go a little bit more in depth in the position and in your qualifications for the position. So a lot of times that phone screen will be more like a get to know you, ask a few questions, kind of gauge your skill level and your interest and things like that. The second interview would be more in line with, here, let me explain a little bit more about what the job is all about. They might ask more in-depth questions. You might actually be interviewing with more than one person. So that might include a tour if you're on site, things like that. So it tends to be a little bit more in-depth than the first interview. And then at some point, they're going to offer you the position, hopefully. And then there may be a little bit of back and forth about salary and some other things. And then eventually there will be an agreement between you and your employer that you're going to take the job and they're going to settle on a start date. And then at that point, you are considered an employee, and you need to consider yourself committed to that job that you have accepted. So that's kind of just a really quick job search process in a nutshell. If you have any questions, feel free to ask. You're welcome to unmute your microphone if you're in the session live, or you can type some comments or questions in the chat as well. And I have my phone open so that I can see those while we go through the slides. I see a couple of people typing in the chat, so I'm just going to take a moment. Learning more about the salary negotiation process. That is a really popular question. Salary negotiation, I'll say first and foremost, that can essentially be a presentation in and of itself. But to give you a quick sort of highlight reel of what you should probably do to prepare for that salary negotiation conversation, the very first and most important thing is that you should never go into that conversation without having a general idea of what is a reasonable salary expectation for the job that you're applying for. So it shouldn't be based on what you think you would like to make. So for example, I would like to make $100,000 a year. So that's where I'm going to start my negotiation. It should be based on the job that you're applying for and what would be reasonable. So do your research and make sure that you have at least a general understanding of what that might be. I like to go to different websites and just try to find some common salary range expectations. So for example, salary.com or glassdoor.com. You can go to those websites. You can also look at The Bureau of Labor and Statistics, BLS.gov, has a website that you can go to find just some average salaries nationwide. And so maybe just kind of doing a search on 2 or 3 different sites for just a general idea so that you have a salary range that's reasonable for the position that you would be interviewing for. So somewhere between $60,000 to $65,000 a year, for example. And in the job search process, it's becoming more common for employers to ask for your salary expectations earlier in the process than they used to. So you might get asked during your first interview. You might get asked during the application process. So be prepared with some reasonable expectation so that you can answer the question if you are asked. Ideally, you would be able to hold off on that conversation until the offer is made. So even if they ask you in the first interview, for example, what are your salary expectations? You can say something like, I would be happy to discuss salary once we've determined whether or not I'm the right person for this job, or my salary is negotiable and I'd be open to hearing whatever offer you would feel is appropriate. That just kind of keeps it a little bit more open-ended. However, if they insist, you don't want to, be too coy about it. So you can just say, well, based on some research that I've done, for similar positions, I would expect, I'm seeing that the salary range would be somewhere between $50,000 and $60,000 a year. And so that would be sort of where what I would be thinking, or that would be within my salary expectations or something along those lines. That way you can kind of keep it open-ended and say, but I'm still negotiable. I'm happy to hear whatever offer you want to make. Regardless, once they make you the offer, that's your best time to try to do a little bit of negotiation. So if you feel like they're offering you a salary that's a little on the low end of your expectations, just offer, first of all, just, thank them. Thank you so much. When do you need my answer, about this job opportunity? Hopefully they'll give you a few days so that you can sort of collect your thoughts, regroup, and then reach back out later and say, I've been reviewing the offer. There's a lot of really exciting things here. I did have some questions about the salary. Would we be able to schedule some time to talk about that? And then again, just come back with a counter offer. I was doing some research and I was hoping to get something a little bit closer to $55,000 or $57,000 a year. Is that something we can talk about? So counter offer, see what they say, and then you can decide whether or not you still want to accept the position based on whatever they're saying. There may be some exceptions that they can make, like a increase in your moving allowance or a signing bonus or a promise of a salary increase after a year. So there may be a little bit of wiggle room there so that you can get closer to your salary expectation. But regardless, you can accept the job even if they say, no, I'm sorry, but that really is our final offer. And if you still want the job, then you can say, thank you so much. I'd still like to accept the position at that salary, and then you can still move forward. It doesn't mean that you can't take the job. So, like I said, this is a whole session we could do all in and of itself, but my key factors would be to know what's to be expected and be prepared to counter offer when the offer is made, because you're not going to get a salary increase if you don't ask for it. And so as long as you're being reasonable, then you can have a discussion and a dialogue about it. And then you can decide if you want to accept the job based on where that counter offer goes. Hopefully that helps at least give you a starting point for that. So that should at least, help you to be prepared. Don't ever answer that question without having an answer. So if they ask you and you don't know what the going rate is for that position, don't make up a number on the spot. You can say, would it be all right if I do a little bit of research first and get back to you on that? And hopefully that will satisfy them. And maybe you can follow up the next day or something with your salary expectations, because if you say something too low or too high, either way, it's not a great thing to do. Because if you're too low, then you're not giving yourself the credit that you deserve. And if it's too high, then they might not want to continue interviewing you. I see in the chat also that there's a question about will they all have a phone interview? And I will say that almost always there's going to be some kind of a pre-screen interview. Maybe it'll be a video instead of a phone. Maybe they'll bring you in person first. They might just start with an on-site interview, but in general, a phone interview is pretty common practice. So I can't say that it is 100% going to be a phone interview every time, but I would say I would expect a phone interview. And I mean, hopefully you would know when they're scheduling the interview, they'll tell you, is it phone? Is it in person? Is it video? So that you can prepare for whatever that might look like. And we do have interview resources and interview strategies, presentations, and things that you can participate in if you're interested in learning a little bit more about how to prep for different types of interviews. All right. So we're going to kind of move on to the, just a couple of other things. So the average job search takes 6 to 8 months. I'm not going to, I'm not trying to depress anybody, but I do want to make sure that you understand that it's a good idea to give yourself as much time as possible to do your job search. And this is true for internships and full-time jobs. So even an internship search can take on average 6 to 8 months, sometimes even longer. So I usually encourage students to start their internship or full-time job search at least a full semester before they actually want that job to start. I genuinely believe that giving yourself a year is not out of the scope of reality. And I think that we're going to talk a little bit about, networking in a minute. And I think that this is where networking can really help to fast track your job application process, but it can also help you to have a successful job search within that 1 year time frame, because it gives you a lot of time to make yourself known by people, have conversations with people that might be able to help you in your job search. So just keep in mind that 6 to 8 months is the average. Sometimes it takes less. Sometimes it takes more. I don't really have an accurate number for what the pandemic has done to the job search process in terms of length of time. But, I think 6 to 8 months is still a reasonable expectation. So just a couple of tips on how to get your job search started. You want to make sure that you have, you're ready to go. So make sure you know how to build an effective resume and cover letter. Find the job search tools that will work best for you. So Handshake is the one that we use at, the Career Development Center. I think it's great, but it's not the only one that exists. Indeed.com is another good one. LinkedIn is a good place to go for job searching. You don't have to be on every single job search site there is in existence. Pick 2 or 3 that you think work best for you, and where you feel like you're going to find good opportunities, and just stick with those. You can set up, notifications so that you get notified when new jobs get posted that match up with what you're looking for, things like that. Make sure people know what kinds of jobs you're open to. So professors, friends, colleagues, family members, anybody, the mailman, anybody that you think might be able to kind of be on the lookout or help you in your job search. Just make sure that you're talking to people and letting them know about what you're looking for, and if they have any good tips for you. And then, make sure that you're participating in events and job fairs and things like that, so that you can get a good get good opportunities to actually interact with and talk to recruiters. Those events can be really powerful, and we have done a lot of the job fairs and things that we do have been converted to virtual, and so you can still do them even in the world that we live in now. You can chat with employers and attend networking sessions and things that are being held online, and you can go to Handshake to find out about any upcoming events that we're hosting through the Career Center, where employers are going to be present. Any thoughts or questions? I do have a question for you guys, and that is, if you had to make a guess, what percentage of jobs do you feel are filled through networking? You can type it in the chat if you want to, or you can just unmute your microphone and say it. I've got a 75 and a 70%. Does anybody else want to make a guess before I reveal the answer? You're both really close, and I will be 100% transparent here. 85% of jobs are filled through networking is a LinkedIn statistic. I would say it's anywhere from 70 to 85% of jobs, depending on, the data that you're looking at. But if you really think if that's a vast majority of jobs are filled through networking, they say over 70% of jobs are filled before they're even posted online. I'm not trying to discourage you. I really just want you to think about where you are spending most of your time in your job search. And most of us spend almost 100% of our time just searching for and applying for jobs online. And so networking is going to be a very important and powerful part of your job search. But when I usually start talking about networking with my students, they start to feel a little overwhelmed or discouraged, because networking can feel like a really intimidating or difficult thing to do. So for those of you who are in the room with me, what makes networking feel sort of intimidating or scary or overwhelming? Yeah, we're going to talk about some good virtual networking tips. So hopefully that will help us to kind of get jump started. Um, a lot of times the things that I hear from students are just, I think they're normal reactions. First, I don't know anybody. I don't even know where to start. Like, I don't have anybody that I can talk to network. Another thing that I hear a lot is it feels so cheesy to network. It feels like I'm just kind of trying to be like a salesman or something, and it just doesn't feel very natural. And so I would like to argue that networking does not have to be difficult. There are lots of different ways that you can network in maybe slightly more organic ways, or in ways that would not feel so cheesy or so inauthentic. Um, yeah, I mean, it's just really, really hard, especially if you're an introvert. I'm an introvert. Networking is not something that comes easily to me. So I imagine that there are lots of people that feel the same way. So one of the things that I think makes it a little bit easier is to attend an event where networking is already the purpose. For example, I mentioned that we have virtual job fairs and virtual networking events going on right now. Whether they're in person or virtual, these are events that are set up where people are showing up because they want you to talk to them. And so it doesn't feel like I'm being so annoying if I know that that's why they're there. So that definitely is helpful to me, is to know, okay, the purpose of this event is for me to go and introduce myself to people. So at a virtual job fair or at a virtual networking event, it would be helpful. You're probably going to be chatting, typing instead of visibly, like verbally communicating with each other at least half the time. So it might be helpful for you to or craft a typed pitch, like an elevator pitch or a 30-second introduction, but in typed form, something that you can just type into a chat to introduce yourself. And honestly, that takes a little bit of the pressure off of your networking efforts because at least for me, it would be easier to type into a chat than it would be for me to have to, go up and shake hands and make eye contact and smile and, try to make sure that I say something without tripping over my words or whatever might happen when I'm nervous. So virtual networking is happening, and in some ways that might take some of the pressure off of you when you're trying to network. LinkedIn is another really great way to network virtually because that's basically what it is. It's just a professional networking social media site. So all of the networking that you do there is going to be had by finding people that you can connect with, sending them messages, making yourself visible on through your profile so that people can find you and reach out to you. So LinkedIn is another great way to virtually network. Having casual conversations, that's probably a little bit harder right now. And so you could say, I would normally encourage you to, when you're standing in that long Chick-fil-A line, to go and try to chit chat with the person that's, in front of you or behind you, just to get into the habit of having casual conversations. But that's a little bit hard to do right now. So 6 feet away is a little bit tough to communicate. And so you might not necessarily get to do this one as much as you would before. And so, we can kind of table that for now. And then, make sure that, again, professors and friends and people that you are in class with know what's going on with you, chit chat with them, let them help you, but then also be open to helping them because you might be a good resource for someone else. So what you should include in your pitch, I, normally would tell you that your pitch is going to want to include maybe 3 things that you would want someone to know about you to convince them that you're someone that they should think about for the job that they have available. So for like a job fair or something like that, I think it should be, hello, my name is Nikki Dickins. And then, what are you majoring in? What are you studying? What have you done already that you think is, what skills do you have or what experiences do you have that you think, you know, really lend themselves well to what you want to do in the future? Just some kind of piece of relevant information. My name is Nikki Dickins. I'm the Assistant Director for Career Engagement and Professional Development at the Lockheed Martin Career Development Center. I have been working at the Career Development Center for over 20 years, and I'm passionately dedicated to helping students with their career, journeys and whatever I decide to say there, just something that's going to let them get a sense of who I am. And then I like to say that you should open it up to a discussion or dialogue. So I've read a lot about your company. I see that you have a position open for XYZ position. I'd really love to learn a little bit more about how someone like me could, would be able to succeed in your organization. Or I'd really like to learn more about that position and what kinds of opportunities you have for someone like me. So just kind of putting it back on them so that you're opening up and inviting them to speak to you. And then hopefully that is just going to open up a dialogue where you can go back and forth with them. So you can type that out in a virtual session. You can vocally say it if you get to, have a conversation, mics on and videos on, or, in person. So again, just 3 or 4 sentences. It shouldn't be super, super long, but something that's going to give them a sense of who you are and maybe what your purpose is for talking to them. And then, I do want to talk a little bit about this virtual setting that we're in, because that's, going to be a huge part of our job searches moving forward. I think even after, things get a little bit back to normal, employers have kind of just had their eyes opened for how much they can get done virtually, and how they can broaden their outreach through social media and through virtual networking platforms and things. So I do think that this is going to carry forward. You're going to see more virtual job fairs and things in the future. So this is probably not something that's going to completely go away even after we go back to normal. And so I wanted to start, I like to ask this question. If you Googled yourself and nothing came up, do you think that would be a good thing or a bad thing? I see bad. Yeah, I would say that in general that would probably be a bad thing, because if you're nothing's coming up at all, then that either means that you have just buried yourself, like you have cleaned your social media account so much that nothing shows up. That's a red flag. Or that you just don't have a digital presence at all, and that's just not very realistic in 2021. And so we know that companies are using social media to recruit. So you need to be able to meet them where they are. And with the pandemic, social recruitment is even bigger. I mean, these numbers are a few years old now. If 77% of employers are using LinkedIn for their recruitment purposes, then you need to be on LinkedIn, right? I mean, you need to be where those employers are going to find you. One thing that I like about Handshake is that it's another platform where you can create a profile and employers can reach out and contact you directly about jobs that they have available. But the cool thing about Handshake is that it is a college student platform. So it's for UTA students and alumni, and the employers that are on there using it know that they're most often talking to a recent college grad or a currently enrolled student. So that even kind of makes it even more accessible. So if you're not already utilizing Handshake and you don't already have a platform, a profile, I would recommend going ahead and filling one out. They're using other social media platforms too, like LinkedIn or Facebook and Instagram and places like that too. But I think LinkedIn is still our number one. So if you had to pick one to kind of put your energy into, I would say LinkedIn would probably be best, unless you are in a visual a field that has sort of like maybe some visual communications. Maybe you're a film student or an art student, or something where that visual presence might need to be there, where you can put examples of your work and things like that. So Instagram to me would make a lot of sense in that case. So we do want to make sure that when they are social sleuthing and they are Googling you or finding your social media platforms, that they're not finding bad things. And so we want you to, consider what you can do to emphasize the good and de-emphasize the bad in your online presence. So if you kind of look at what statistically employers have said is going to have a negative impact on their impression of you, and then things that are going to be a positive, um, then this can maybe help you to understand sort of where you should start focusing your energy when you're building out your online presence for networking purposes. So think about the good examples of your work, showing engagement in organizations and groups, having mutual connections. Those kinds of things can really help you when you're doing your job search. Having bad grammar, referencing, illegal substances, maybe not marijuana, because marijuana is legal in a lot of places now, but illegal substances, overusing alcohol, things like that, then those can be negatively impacting. So the question is it better to have your profiles on things like Instagram or Facebook, private or public? I would say you should maybe consider how you can use social media platforms to promote yourself. So maybe you have an Instagram account that is simply for promotion, self-promotion for jobs that you want. And maybe you have a private Instagram account that is for more of your families and friends and just your casual life type stuff. So that might be one way that you can work around it. And maybe what you do is you create, and we'll talk about this in a minute, you create an online presence using your middle initial for for formal, professional things, and then not using your middle initial for private things, or something. Use separate email addresses, something that's going to kind of keep those separate from people that are looking at your stuff. So, for example, my name is Nicole Dickins, and I go by Nikki. So maybe if I wanted to create a professional presence for myself, I would put Nicole on my resume. My LinkedIn account would say Nicole. My Instagram account would say Nicole, and I would actually point employers to those sites, so that if they're at my LinkedIn, they're going to see the information about how to access my other social media platforms. If I wanted to advertise them on my resume, I would make sure that they're all the ones that I want them to look at, so that they're not just relying on Google to find me. Like, I'm telling them where I want them to go. So that is how I would sort of start to take ownership of my online presence when talking about using it in your job search. So I wanted to just kind of spend a couple of minutes thinking about branding yourself and how you want to be identified as a candidate for the jobs that you're applying for, and ways that you can build your brand in a way that's going to work for you. So I really want to point out that your brand needs to be authentic. So, for example, if I want to represent myself as someone who is, a great presenter, and somebody who has good communication skills and is friendly and has a strong, work ethic, but people wouldn't say that about me. So if they asked my boss to describe me, if she's not saying those things, then my brand's not authentic. So you want to make sure that your brand is authentic and that people are knowing you for the right things. And so one of the things that I recommend is that you start by asking people, what pops into your mind when you think of me? What kind of feedback have you gotten from your supervisors or coworkers or professors or classmates? Things that they've said about you. Decide what pieces of that you want to own and what pieces of that you'd like to kind of distance yourself from, and figure out how to lean into the parts that you want to own and let that be part of your brand moving forward. And I want to kind of talk about how you would do that online, since that's what we're talking about right now, is virtual networking and managing your digital identity. So I don't want to spend too much time talking about cleaning up the negative. Hopefully you are skilled at doing that already, and you understand that it is important for you to try to bury the negative things, or things that are not necessarily negative but just wouldn't make a good impression on a potential employer, and how you might separate that out so that you can focus in on the things that are going to be important in your job search. So creating your brand starts with identifying, what are you skilled in? What do you want to be known for? What are things that are interesting to you? How do you want to impact other people? This is all going to depend a little bit about, your career goals and your job search, but kind of thinking about those things that bring you energy, that you feel enthusiastic about, things that you'll be excited to talk to people about, and really kind of let that be what leads you through building your online brand. And then start connecting with people that are people that you admire, people that you would like to emulate or work with one day, maybe people that are already known in the field that you want to go into, also people that you would like to provide your services for. So if, again, depending a little bit on what your career goals are. Now, that doesn't mean that those are the only people that you should connect with. I am a firm believer in keeping an open mind and connecting with lots of people from lots of different backgrounds with lots of different types of experiences and interests, because, that's what networking is all about, is kind of broadening your perspective and learning new things from other people and letting other people learn new things from you. So, never know the positivity that can come from, keeping an open mind. But of course, you want to zero in and focus in on people that are in your field, that have the opportunities that you would want, companies, individuals, all of that. So make those connections on LinkedIn or on your social media profiles, if you choose to use your Facebook or Instagram or Twitter accounts in your job search. And then it is extremely important that you not only connect with people, but that you are also curating content. So, you know, share your thoughts and ideas about things. Make sure that you're posting content that is going to help them to understand who you are a little bit better. Again, participating in projects, volunteer work, those kinds of things can really make a difference. Comment on other people's posts and share their articles, share their information, those kinds of things. Just engage. Make sure that you're actually engaging on LinkedIn and whatever other social media platforms you might want to use. And so just a few best practices of things that you could do there in that space. It says to use a professional picture. That does not mean that you need to hire a professional photographer. It just means that you have a picture in which you look like a professional. So, save the vacation pictures for your personal accounts. And on your professional accounts, you would want to have a picture where you're dressed professionally, where you look professional, you have a professional background. And then I think it would be a good idea to link your social medias together by sharing, maybe using the same picture for whatever social media accounts you're using in your job search. So your LinkedIn headshot and your Instagram headshot and your Facebook headshot are all the same, so that they're connected and unified. And then literally link them all to each other. So in your bio on Instagram, you could link to your LinkedIn. In your LinkedIn, in your LinkedIn profile, maybe you push them back to your Instagram account, or make sure you're cross-referencing. And think about your bio. I was just talking to a student yesterday about her LinkedIn bio, and a lot of times we kind of use our bio almost like it's a resume objective, but a bio on LinkedIn can be a little bit more personal. It can be a little bit more like that elevator pitch we were talking about, where you say, I'm passionate about these things, or I'm really excited about these types of opportunities, and I have this unique skill set that I think is going to be of value in the workplace. So talk about yourself, brag about yourself a little bit, reflect your brand, and make sure that your keyword searchable, so that when people are looking for someone that has these skills or, these experiences, you're going to come up in that search. And then we talked a little bit about the other things already. I mean, using hashtags. I mean, it's kind of like the art of getting followers, right? Is finding out how to use the right kinds of hashtags that are going to get you to pop up in a search, or to be noticeable, maybe using the same hashtags that other people are using in your field, so that you can, again, stay connected to the people that are going to be relevant to your job search. I hope that's helpful. Is there anything that you have questions about that we've talked about so far? I went through some of that a little bit quickly, so I would be happy to answer some questions. Okay, so no questions so far. So just a few tips for moving forward. One thing that I always like to emphasize in the building your digital identity and networking virtually is that you don't have to be everywhere. You don't have to spread yourself really thin in your virtual networking efforts. Figure out where you feel like you can get the most return on your investment of time. For me personally, I would recommend any virtual networking event that is going to be held through the university. So either through the Career Development Center or through your department. Any opportunity that you can have where someone is taking the time out of their day to address or talk with UTA students, because that's a smaller group of people, and it's already focused, and the energy is already directed toward UTA students, and so that's a really good place to start. And then I think picking social media platforms that make sense for you in your search. So LinkedIn would be an obvious one for most career paths, most majors. And then there may be others based on your field and what you want to do and where you're going to have the biggest audience for the type of information that you want to share. So maybe you need a YouTube account so that you can share YouTube videos. that might be something that makes sense for you, but it wouldn't make sense for everyone. Some people would want to start a blog or some kind of a podcast or something like that, where, again, you're putting yourself out there in a digital, virtual way, where you can become known and engage with other people. Make sure that your communication is on point. You don't want this to be, like I know sometimes when I'm just casually posting an update on Facebook or something, I'm not concerned about grammar or spelling or anything like that. But if I were using it for professional purposes, I would make sure that I was using strong and positive communication skills. And then keep that network building and growing. Don't stop at just people that you think are going to be relevant to your field. And make sure that you're doing good work and that you're advertising that good work. So we have a few minutes for questions. Does anybody have any questions that they would like to ask? You're welcome to type those in the chat, or again, you're more than welcome to unmute your microphone and ask the question. And while you're thinking about whether or not you want to ask a question, I do have one more LinkedIn tip that I think is really cool. And that is that on LinkedIn, there is a University of Texas at Arlington group that you can join. And within that group, you have access to over 100,000 UTA students and alumni that you already know you have something in common with because you're connected via UTA. And one of the things that I think can be a really powerful way to network is by connecting with fellow UTA alum or fellow UTA students. Maybe they have an experience that you're really interested in, or maybe they are working at a company that you would like to work for someday. And you can reach out to them. And when you're putting a connection on LinkedIn, you're requesting that connection, I would recommend that you personalize your message. So that you can say something like, hello, I found your profile through the University of Texas at Arlington group on LinkedIn, and I was really impressed with the experiences that you've had since graduating. I would love to set up a meeting or a time where we can chat a little bit more, so that I can learn more about how you were able to find success in your field. And that way you're inviting them to carry the conversation forward. It's not a connection and that's it. It's actually the first step in what is hopefully going to turn into an ongoing networking situation, because networking is hardly ever just a one-time only situation. Networking is about building and cultivating relationships. And so anytime that you can have that conversation continue is going to be a good thing. So go on LinkedIn, find the University of Texas at Arlington group. You can search through the alumni that are in that group. You can type in a keyword, type in a major or a job title and see what comes up, and then see if there's anybody there that you would like to connect with. And then my final slide is just contact info. uta.joinhandshake.com is the link to go to set up your Handshake account. You just log in with your net ID and password. It is free for you to use. That's where all of our part-time, full-time internship and on-campus student employment positions are going to be held. It's also where you're going to find out about all of those virtual networking events that I was talking about. We've still got at least a couple coming up this semester that you might want to participate in. And then you can also see our email address and our website there where you can access other resources. And you're more than welcome to reach out to us, and we would be happy to talk with you one-on-one about your job search or any questions or concerns you have about virtual networking or other job search things. I think that wearing a suit or a jacket is always a good idea. The question in the chat, do you have to wear a suit or a suit jacket when interviewing? I honestly think it's a good idea to dress as professionally as possible. However, there are certain industries or, job types that are a little bit more casual. And so, for example, if you're interviewing for a teaching position or um, a social work position, maybe it would be slightly more casual. But the thing about being professional and dressing professionally is that it affects the way that you carry yourself sometimes. So I think it can be really empowering. So I think you should wear something that makes you feel confident and empowered and that is going to communicate to the person that's interviewing you that you are ready to step into the professional world, which as a college student is one of your biggest obstacles, is to prove that you're ready to move into the real world. I think college is the real world, but that professional world that you might be expected to join, when you graduate. So a suit is always a good idea, at least a blazer. I think it can really just polish up an outfit. Any other questions? So I see a question here about how you get involved in social media more organically and not to make it seem more forced or fake. Um, I mean, that's a good question. Um, I think that might just be where your authenticity and your good communication skills come into play. For example, LinkedIn is a no-brainer. It's easy because the whole point of LinkedIn is for you to put yourself out there in a professional networking setting. If you're worried about starting a new Instagram account, for example, where it's all about your, professional goals, then you might feel like, oh, that's weird and it doesn't. I'm going to have to create a whole bunch of content really fast and it's just going to seem like it's a little bit too focused and cheesy on just this one thing. Um, so I guess an organic way to do that would be depending on how you feel about your private Instagram account, your personal Instagram account, for example. If you feel like there's nothing on there that you would be embarrassed that someone would see, then I would just organically start sharing things about life at UTA, things about the classes that you're taking that you enjoy, pictures of yourself at, student organization meetings or, things like that that are just kind of going to blend into your life. And to me, that's the most organic way to do it. Is just to let it kind of blend in. It's not going to be a deal breaker for an employer to see that you're, on a family vacation in your photos, at some point in your Instagram feed. That's normal behavior. But if you have things on there that you wouldn't want seen that can't be scrubbed off or deleted, then that would be the time that I would recommend maybe just starting a whole brand new account and making the other one private. So I'm going to go ahead and stop sharing my screen now. We have a survey that we would love for you to fill out to give us some feedback on this session. So I'm going to go ahead and copy that in the chat. If you wouldn't mind taking a moment to click on that link and fill out that survey information, that would be very helpful. Otherwise, I'd be happy to answer a couple more questions. And thank you guys for your participation today and for being here to get some information. You are very welcome. So